The first question is a very direct one. Uh, Is it already known what the role of local governments will be? So probably the question is about more specific guidelines. Okay, let me start. I could talk about this topic throughout a whole day, but definitely the role of local governance, especially looking at economic models, then the best economic model is a community model using local resources. I think that Paul Günther was the name of the researcher. He describes the local economic models with resources that also are local. And maybe it's not that much on the level of local governments. It's more like local communities. For example, how to make use of biological waste. And there should be a structure created for creating models for reuse of biological waste for producing of soil that later can be used for growing tomatoes or cucumbers or blueberries. So making more value out of resources that exist locally. That was my example. Taimar, would you like to add anything? Yes. Local governments. It's in the middle of events because locally it's known how things should be done and what the best solutions should be. There are such practices, several ones, so it should not be defined only on central level. Vice versa, local touch is very important because one solution is not good for everyone. And we should proceed from what the local circumstances are. And then this local touch, why have we not carried out things already? Because there is no understanding. But if somebody comes there and orders people to do something, what is the reaction? But I believe that there are lots of powers locally to carry out different things. And the next question is that why doesn't circular economy develop by itself? And are there any hinders or barriers from the point of view of the society for switching to circular economy? Well, on one hand, the government puts into place a certain framework, but talking about private sector, in private sector, for example, open data could be used. Open data are produced on tax payers' money, and although it's an old principle, and governmental systems every here and there, they also sell the data. But we would like to call the third sector or private sector also to join us and start doing things. If the government interferes very powerfully, then something has already gone wrong. And at the same time, the governmental level should create the framework. And it might sometimes also be hard to understand what has been said. So from the governmental level, we are rather the supporters. And another aspect I would like to mention is that sometimes it happens that we could meet golden greenwash here and there. And this is not the idea why we are doing this all. I do agree as well. So basically, the governmental level should not interfere. But on the other hand, if humans had not interfered at all, then still everything would function perfectly. But as humans started to interfere at some point, now we have to do it continuously. And we have to influence systems where market failures have been written in from the very beginning, as for example, oil. Crude oil, and governments should definitely not build barriers, but at some point subsidies have been paid, technologies have been invented, and now there is a need for investments. And very often private sector is not ready to make these investments. And now the question is whether the new economic model is supported or the other way is through administrative barriers or other measures. The circular economy model should be supported. Also through banning certain products like one-time use plastic cutlery or plates, etc. And if somebody says that no, we are not going to use this anymore, this is an example of how the governments and state can interfere and also to annul the market distortions. And if somebody doesn't offer it, then it wouldn't happen. I would like to ask the next question. This is a question to Kaupo again. Why? This event is meant mainly for the public center, but why are these events not organized for private sector in order to stimulate, to offer incentives? It doesn't really stimulate if money is just printed. And in private sector, you have to earn income. So why are these kind of events not organized for private sector? Well, that's not true, because we have been organizing circular economy conferences since 2018. And mainly this has been focused towards the private sector. So who's from private sector? Who's from public sector? So both of them are represented here. But it's a writer's question, and it all has to go hand in hand. And if we try to put together all the topics, then it might be a little bit of interest for everyone. But if we deal with topics of private sector, then we focus at these topics, and if it's conference are focused on public sector, then we focus on their topics. I was recently on Greenest Summit, and there the focus was on new economy. But obviously, private sector has to be involved as much as possible. Taimar, you said in your presentation that in the project that you presented, there was 1 million of finances, and you said that there was not too much money available. But in EU projects, there was 111 million euros available. So how would you comment this? It's a pleasure for me to comment my colleagues' slides, but the best one wins. That's how simple it is. And maybe it would be still better if Kaupo would express his opinion. Okay, then let's ask the question now. What is the point of view of the Ministry of Environment? Yeah, I do agree. 111 millions and 1 million. There is a big difference. But if we think about how these 100 millions are used in the society as a whole, we could say that 111 millions is not a big sum of money for the society as a whole, because we need to solve certain problems and certain situations where there are business obstacles, as the example that I gave earlier as well. For example, it is much cheaper to continue selling salads in shops for one-time used boxes. But if we want to support a shift for using salad boxes that can be used many times, then there have to be some other incentives. But there are other topics as waste economy, including also transport of waste, introducing more modern ways like weighing the waste people give that they send away. And in order to introduce all this kind of innovations and the investments for carrying out these kind of innovative approaches, the private sector does not necessarily have an interest in investments like this. And if companies take their Excel tables and they see that the payback period is 8 years, they decide not to invest. But if the government sector says that we're going to support you and the payback period will be 4 or 5 years, then a private company interest is definitely much bigger. So the European Economic Area financial support is in reality even bigger, and then is a need for change. And we really hope that by this way we can carry out the changes. Taimar, would you like to comment what you heard? And then I would like to ask for some ideas from you. Yes, I can comment. So whether the financial support is sufficient, or is it much money or not much money, the main thing is to use these resources in a smart way. And sometimes it feels that we can put money endlessly into some systems, like the water supply systems in Estonia, and its local governments together with the private sector who has been doing. And it's all in all 1 billion that has been invested. And there are results with the help of technology. And when elaborating circular economy solution, we need much more creativity. We can't buy the solutions from shops. And the last question, it's a fantastic system because there are so many anonymous questions here. But now the final question. Both of you, please, during 1 minute, give us a general idea, and it's a fantasy question. If you would be the Prime Minister, what would your first decision be in the area of circular economy in Estonia? Well, yes, I really started thinking that what the decision would be in specifically circular economy. I would like to return to involvement and local governments again, and private sector and public sector and involvement of both of them, because this is a topic that cannot be solved only by one sector. It's a global question. And Kaupo had a fantastic slide with both biodiversity and climate change mentioned on this slide. And here in Estonia, we might not yet sense the higher temperatures yet. And since 1962, 0.4 degrees has been the temperature rise. And in some parts of the world, the situation has become really bad already. So something has happened that we did not expect to happen. And now availability of resources is definitely a question of security for us. And it's not only a question of safety or environment, it's a question of survival. So we should much more focus on what is happening here as well as globally. Kaupo, as Prime Minister, I would suggest to the Estonian Parliament, Riigikogu, to eliminate VAT from reused products and maintaining or fixing workshops. A very specific suggestion. Thank you.